If you get anxious presenting, your heart races, your slides feel overloaded, you walk away thinking, that wasn't great, this video's for you. Because the real reason it feels so uncomfortable is probably not what you've been thinking. It's not that you're missing some charismatic speaker gene. It's not because maybe you're presenting in a second language. And it's definitely not something you can fix by adding 3 more slides at midnight or learning a couple of new hand gestures. I'm Dr. Churchill, and I work with researchers and academics who feel overlooked or not a natural speaker. I help them turn dense, uncomfortable presentations into clear, confident, career-defining talks. I've asked thousands of researchers a very simple question. Can you tell me what you're doing? And what happens next is remarkably consistent. In the next few minutes, I'll show you the hidden source of a lot of the stress and discomfort you feel when you present. Why the usual fixes, more practice, more slides, more presentation tips, they don't actually help. Instead, I'll show you a different way to prepare your talk so you can walk into your next presentation knowing people will understand and remember what you've shared. Once you start doing this, presenting stops being something to survive, becomes instead something you can shape and control. Here's the first mindset shift. You probably don't actually hate presenting. What you hate is standing up there in front of people when you're not fully clear about how to explain what you're doing or why it matters. The internal fog about your message becomes external stress. Because when the message is fuzzy in your head, your body does what it should. It treats the talk as a threat. So the first mindset shift is this. It's not my personality, it's the experience of trying to explain something I'm not really clear about yet. And this brings us back to that earlier question I always ask researchers when I start working with them. What are you actually doing? Let me share a quick story. I asked a postdoc student last month, so what are you doing? The next 10 minutes, they walked through a half dozen dense slides, detailing their technical approach and their even more technical results. It was a startup pitch and it's not public, so I can't get into the details. Suffice it to say, they did, deep in the details. So much so, no one listening would ever actually be able to understand what they did. And if we're being totally honest, they didn't really understand it either. At least not in the way they needed to. So we unpacked it. We set the slides aside and we just talked. 10 minutes later, I said something to him like this. In order to, and I named the problem, you are, and I inserted a version of his hypothesis that he was testing. By, I filled in a quick bit about his approach. So that, I talked about what the relief of the problem would feel like. He paused for a moment and then said, that's exactly right. I've never thought about it that way, but with a few changes, that'd be perfect. He now had a crisp, clear, foundational understanding of his work. And I could see everything begin to shift for him. Building from this foundational understanding, he could now see where the complexity could be truncated, where some of the background, maybe he didn't need it, where some of the slides could be deleted. And with those shifts, suddenly the time he had to share his story didn't feel too short. He saw a path open where he could share something he thought would both make sense and be accurate and honest, and still have the integrity he demands of himself to not oversimplify or overclaim. He now understood what he wanted his audience to understand and why it's important, not in all its complexity and nuance and technical detail, but in a simple, clear, one-sentence foundational frame. And here's the thing that then happens. Once you're confident about that frame, the part of your anxiety that's rooted in your fear that you can't easily explain what you're doing and why it matters, well, that part of your anxiety starts to fade. And it's a surprisingly bigger part than you might think. So if you can't share a simple one-sentence description of what you're doing and why that matters, that's a pretty big part for why presenting might still feel kind of horrible. You're being asked to explain something in public you haven't figured out how to explain very well yet. So figure that out and you'll be on your way to delivering a more clear, more impactful, more confident presentation. And that brings us to the second shift. testing it. The creation of a one-sentence foundational summary is only step one in this process. You now have a really clear foundational understanding of what you're doing and why it matters, but you don't yet have certainty that your audience will understand it, and that once they understand it, they will actually care. And this uncertainty, it's exhausting. Will they get it? Will they care? Tough to feel confident if you're uncertain about the answers to those two questions. So based on this foundational understanding, you then build your talk, and then you test it. You need to be able to shift from walking in blind, hoping, fingers crossed, to I know what they'll think as I say it. No more will they understand. Will there be questions? Will there be awkward silence? To get there, what you need to do is start treating your research talk like a research project by finding out what people will understand and what questions they'll have as part of your research prep process. If you're thinking this sounds like too much work, imagine instead what it would feel like to know those answers before your talk. Imagine how much quieter those voices in your head will be. If they can't ask, will they understand? Will they be interested? Because you already know the answers to both are yes and even more than I hoped. I see this every time I run presentation prep coaching programs because we do this work together. The feedback process is simple but different from one you've ever done before. You do a practice presentation, but instead of looking for critical feedback about how to explain something differently or what to change, you simply get data about what people heard and what questions they have. You can do this by interviewing them, by creating a form with some simple questions, or by letting them chat about what you said while you listen. All of these strategies can work. The key is to simply focus on the information you need, which is what did they understand or not, and what they are now curious to learn more about. When you know these two things, you have real insight about how your talk is landing. And then you can iterate until the things they are understanding and wanting to know more about are the things you are wanting to share and talk more about. And this process transforms speakers. I see this over and over again. Anxiety fades, confidence soars. And it soars because you as a speaker now know exactly what someone will hear and understand. No more guessing, no more uncertainty. And with the uncertainty about whether your audience will understand disappearing, another layer of anxiety fades away. So remember, before anxiety management tricks like breath work will work, you need to ensure some of the foundational problems of your anxiety have been dealt with. And two big ones are, do you have a clear, simple understanding of what you're doing and why you're doing it? When you then use that to build your talk, will your audience understand and get it? When those two things are true, you've defanged a big part of most speakers' anxiety, and you're well on the way to confidently giving clear, memorable talks. If you'd like some help putting this into practice, check out the course I'm building specifically for PhDs and postdocs. Two of the lessons in it, deeper dives that outline the process and provide templates for getting clearer content. And how to get that feedback that gives you insight rather than advice. A link to check out the rest of what's included is below. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I share a new one every week.